The early morning sun glimmered over the calm surface of Lake Hammond, its golden reflection dancing across the water like ripples of peace. For Marcus Reed, that peace was everything. He had worked for it, earned it, and built it with his own 2 hands. His lakeside cabin wasn't just a property, it was a symbol of hard work, perseverance, and pride. Every plank of wood, every inch of fencing around that land was a reminder of how far he had come. Marcus was a decorated member of the State Police Task Force. For years, he had handled undercover operations, high-stress raids, and dangerous criminals. But out here, away from the chaos, he found something rare: silence. His old Jeep Wrangler, painted matte black with tactical modifications, sat near the dock like a loyal guard. To anyone else, it was just a vehicle. But to Marcus, it represented years of service, missions completed, and lives protected. Across the narrow street lived Karen Whitmore, president of the Lakeside Ridge Homeowners Association. A woman whose power in the neighborhood came not from authority, but from control. Her smile was tight, her rules were endless, and her obsession with appearances knew no limits. She hated that Marcus didn't attend HOA meetings, didn't decorate his porch for their community theme days, and most of all, that he parked what she called a military truck near the lake. That morning, as Marcus packed for another week-long assignment with the task force, he didn't realize eyes were already on him. From behind her curtain, Karen watched as he tossed a duffel bag into the Jeep and locked the gate to his driveway. She saw the police tag on his keychain, but thought little of it. In her mind, Marcus was just another stubborn homeowner who thought he was above HOA rules. After Marcus left, Karen stormed to her HOA group chat, typing furiously, "That man's vehicle is an eyesore. It violates community guidelines. It's been there for weeks, taking up space and lowering our neighborhood's value. I'll handle it myself if no one else does." By noon, Karen stood outside Marcus's fence, clipboard in hand, her sunglasses reflecting the Jeep that sat beyond the locked gate. She had called the towing company twice, but both refused when they learned the name on the title. So she decided to take matters into her own hands. She called her son, Blake, a college dropout who followed her rules without question. "Mom, are you sure about this?" he asked, holding a pair of bolt cutters. "This looks serious." Karen smirked. "Serious? It's just a car parked where it doesn't belong. We're the HOA. We make the rules. Besides, he's never around. He won't even know." The lock snapped with a sharp metallic crack that echoed across the quiet lakeside. Blake hesitated as he opened the gate, glancing around nervously. Karen waved him on, the thrill of authority pulsing through her veins. Together, they walked toward the Jeep. "This thing looks like it's from a SWAT team," Blake muttered, running his hand over the reinforced door. Karen scoffed. "Please, he probably bought it at some police auction to look important. Let's get it moved. Park it in the HOA impound lot. Maybe he'll learn to follow the rules next time." As Blake turned the ignition, the Jeep roared to life. He smiled, impressed by the smooth power beneath the hood. But then, a small green light blinked on the dashboard, a tracking beacon linked to the task force database. Within seconds, a silent alarm was triggered, transmitting a location alert directly to the State Police Command Center. 15 miles away, Marcus was mid-briefing when his phone buzzed. He looked down, confusion flickering across his face. Vehicle security alert, unauthorized movement detected. His heart dropped. His Jeep, the same one filled with classified communication gear and encrypted field data, was moving. He excused himself, his tone sharp and controlled. "My vehicle's been breached. I'm heading back to the cabin." Within minutes, 2 unmarked SUVs from the task force followed his lead, sirens off, lights hidden. They moved fast and quiet. Meanwhile, Karen proudly filmed a short video for her HOA records, narrating in that cold, rehearsed tone, "This is what happens when you ignore community regulations. We are removing this unauthorized vehicle from our property. HOA rules exist for a reason." She didn't realize that her voice was being recorded on a police database within moments. As the Jeep rolled into the HOA parking lot, Blake noticed something strange, a digital radio monitor still running inside the dashboard. Voices whispered through the static. Unit Bravo 3, confirm vehicle status. Blake frowned. Mom, this isn't normal. Karen waved him off. Turn that thing off and lock it up. We're done here. But they weren't. As the sun dipped below the tree line, the quiet neighborhood suddenly filled with the low growl of engines. 4 black SUVs rolled in from opposite ends of the street, their lights flashing in synchronization. Residents peeked from their porches as armed officers stepped out, surrounding the HOA parking lot. Karen froze mid-sentence, her phone still recording. What is this? Marcus stepped out of the lead SUV, his task force vest visible under his jacket. His eyes were calm, but cutting. Step away from the vehicle, Mrs. Whitmore. Karen stammered, This is a misunderstanding. We were just enforcing HOA rules. Marcus's tone was ice. By breaking into my property and stealing a police vehicle under active surveillance? Her mouth dropped. Blake looked between them, panic rising. Police? Wait, this is your Jeep. Marcus nodded slowly. Not just mine. That Jeep is part of a state task force operation. You've just interfered with a federal vehicle. Neighbors began whispering, phones raised, recording every second. Karen's face turned pale as the realization hit. The lock she'd cut, the gate she'd broken. It wasn't just arrogance anymore. It was a crime. Marcus walked closer, his calm presence commanding silence. You wanted to enforce rules, Mrs. Whitmore. Let me tell you one. Never touch what isn't yours, especially when it belongs to law enforcement. Karen tried to speak, her voice trembling. I didn't know. Marcus cut her off sharply. You didn't care to know. You assumed. You judged. You acted like you owned everything around you. But this time, your power stops here. The officers documented everything. Photos, witness statements, and the recording Karen had made herself. All evidence. As she was read her rights, Karen's pride shattered in front of the entire community she had once ruled. Her son stood silent, realizing that blind obedience had led them into disaster. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't gloat. He simply looked at her, disappointment in his eyes. You should have knocked on my door, Karen. That's all it would have taken. A conversation instead of a crime. When the police SUVs drove away, the sound of their engines echoed through the neighborhood like a warning. The once feared HOA president stood alone in the fading light, surrounded by whispers, her clipboard slipping from her trembling hand. For Marcus, it wasn't about revenge. It was about principle. Respect wasn't given by titles or committees. It was earned through understanding and humanity. And as he looked back one last time at the shattered lock hanging from his gate, he knew one thing for certain. Some lessons can only be learned the hard way. The following morning, the air around Lakeside Ridge felt heavier. The calm rhythm of the lake was replaced by whispers, curiosity, and tension. What had once been a quiet neighborhood now buzzed with the echoes of last night's spectacle. The flashing lights, the armed officers, and the image of Karen Whitmore being led away in handcuffs. Marcus Reed stood by the edge of his property, looking out over the water as the wind brushed through the tall pines. The broken lock lay beside the gate, a silent reminder of how easily peace can be shattered by pride. He wasn't a man who held grudges, but he believed in accountability. The community needed to understand what had happened, not through rumors, but through truth. Inside the HOA clubhouse, tension brewed. A meeting had been called, an emergency session as the vice president described it. Chairs filled quickly, neighbors whispering, each trying to make sense of what had happened. Some defended Karen, others said she'd finally gone too far. And when Marcus walked through the doors, silence fell. He didn't come in uniform. He came as a neighbor, dressed in a plain gray shirt and jeans. But his presence carried weight. The same man they'd once underestimated now stood before them with quiet authority. Before anyone says a word, Marcus began, his tone calm but firm, I'm not here to cause a scene. I just want the truth to be known. A man from the back, Charles Bennett, one of Karen's longtime supporters, crossed his arms. Truth? The truth is that Jeep shouldn't have been there in the first place. HOA guidelines clearly state that Marcus cut in softly. That personal vehicle should be parked in designated areas, yes. But that Jeep isn't a personal vehicle. It's a law enforcement task force unit, equipped with sensitive data and communication tools. It was parked securely on my property behind my locked gate. Murmurs spread. A few nodded, others looked uneasy. Charles pressed on. Maybe so. But she didn't know that. Karen's just trying to keep order around here. Marcus's eyes met his. Order doesn't come from breaking into someone's home. It doesn't come from assuming the worst about your neighbor. It comes from respect. His words hung heavy in the room. One woman, Linda Hayes, raised her hand timidly. Marcus, I think most of us didn't really know you worked with the police. Karen made it sound like you were, well, someone trying to avoid the HOA altogether. Marcus nodded. I know what she made it sound like. But I didn't move here to make enemies. I moved here because I thought this place was about community, about peace. What I saw yesterday reminded me that sometimes the real danger isn't out there on the streets. It's right here, when people start believing their rules make them better than others. There was silence again, the kind that forces reflection. Later that day, Marcus received a call from his superior officer, Captain Lewis. You handled yourself well, Reed. The department's already processed the report. HOA President's facing charges for unlawful entry and vehicle theft. We're letting the DA handle it. Marcus sighed. I'm not looking for her to be ruined, sir. I just want this neighborhood to wake up. Lewis chuckled softly. That might just be harder than most missions you've done. That evening, Marcus took a quiet walk by the lake. The sunset painted the water in soft hues of orange and gold. As he reached the small dock, he noticed a group of children playing nearby, laughing, skipping stones, their joy untouched by adult arrogance. It reminded him why he'd chosen this life, to protect innocence, to preserve what's right. But as he turned back, he saw Blake, Karen's son, standing near his fence, hands shoved deep in his pockets. His face was pale, eyes uncertain. Mr. Reed, Blake said softly, I wanted to say I'm sorry. Marcus studied him for a moment, then nodded. You weren't the one who made the decision, were you? Blake shook his head. No, sir. My mum, she thought she was doing the right thing. She said people like you didn't respect the neighborhood. I didn't question her. I should have. Marcus's gaze softened. Blake, listening to someone isn't wrong, but following blindly, that's where people lose themselves. You've got a good heart. Don't let anyone make you misuse it. Blake's eyes watered. She's going to court, isn't she? Yes, Marcus said quietly, but that's her consequence. What matters is what you learn from it. Blake nodded and left quietly, shoulders low but spirit thoughtful. Over the next few days, change began to stir in Lakeside Ridge. Without Karen's control, residents started questioning the rigidity of their HOA. Rules that once seemed absolute suddenly felt oppressive. Neighbors who had barely spoken began greeting each other, breaking the invisible walls that fear and gossip had built. One afternoon, Marcus was surprised when a group of residents arrived at his cabin, holding a freshly signed petition. Linda stepped forward. Marcus, we've decided to restructure the HOA. No more intimidation, no more control. We want transparency, and if you're willing, we'd like you to serve as community advisor. Marcus raised an eyebrow, surprised. Me? I'm not a politician. Linda smiled. No, you're something better, honest. He thought about it. The idea of helping shape the place he lived in, not through authority, but through integrity, resonated deeply. All right, he said finally. I'll help, but only if we agree that this community stands for equality, not ego. Everyone nodded. Days passed. News about the incident spread across social media. HOA President arrested for stealing police task force vehicle. It became a local headline, then a regional story. Reporters camped outside the neighborhood for interviews, and cameras flashed at every turn. Karen, once the image of suburban control, was now the face of humiliation. She was released on bail, but her reputation was gone. The same neighbors who once feared her now avoided her entirely. Her HOA badge meant nothing now. One afternoon, as Marcus walked toward his mailbox, he saw her standing across the street. Her eyes were tired, her shoulders slumped. For a moment, their gazes met. She walked slowly toward him, clutching a small envelope. "Marcus, I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to give you this." He took the envelope, opened it, and found the broken lock, the one she had cut, polished, clean, and fixed. Attached was a note. "Sometimes it takes breaking something to understand its value. I was wrong." Marcus looked at her for a long time before speaking. "You can't undo what's been done, Karen. But owning up to it, that's a start." She nodded silently, eyes brimming with regret. As she walked away, Marcus looked at the repaired lock in his hand, a symbol of how fragile peace can be and how strong it becomes when rebuilt with honesty. That night, as the lake shimmered under the moonlight, Marcus sat by his porch, sipping coffee, listening to the calm wind rustling through the trees. The chaos had ended, but something new had begun, a community learning to live without fear, without superiority. He knew there would always be challenges, but for the first time Lakeside Ridge felt alive, real, imperfect, and human. And somewhere deep inside, Marcus smiled, not as a cop, not as a victim of arrogance, but as a man who turned conflict into change. The lake shimmered softly that night, as if nature itself was taking a deep breath after days of unrest. Marcus sat on his porch, the repaired lock resting on the wooden table beside his coffee mug. The note from Karen still lay folded beneath it, a quiet symbol of accountability. For the first time in weeks, he felt the air grow lighter, the tension slowly dissolving into something that resembled peace. But peace, Marcus knew, wasn't something you found and kept. It was something you earned over and over again. The next morning, the sound of laughter woke him. Looking through his window, he saw kids riding bikes down the street, their parents chatting by the fences. Neighbors who once avoided eye contact were now helping each other trim hedges and clean yards. What had once been a neighborhood ruled by fear and judgment was slowly turning into what it was meant to be, a community. A knock on his door pulled him from his thoughts. It was Linda again, smiling warmly. "Morning, Marcus. We're having a neighborhood gathering this weekend, a small barbecue by the lake. We'd love for you to come and maybe say a few words." Marcus hesitated. "You really think they want to hear from me?" Linda chuckled. "Marcus, everyone's been talking about how you handled everything. Calm, fair, no drama. That's exactly what this place needed. You gave people courage to speak up." He thought about it and smiled faintly. "All right, I'll come." When Saturday arrived, the lakefront came alive with laughter, music, and the aroma of grilled food. Children played near the dock, splashing water while the adults shared stories under the shade of the pines. It was the first true community event since Karen's downfall. No strict schedules, no inspection lists, just people being human again. Marcus arrived quietly, dressed casually, nodding at the neighbors who greeted him with genuine smiles. Blake approached him with a plate of food. "Mr. Reed, I saved you a burger. Thought you might like it." Marcus accepted it with a grin. "Thanks, Blake. How's your mom holding up?" Blake's expression softened. "She's trying. Court's still going, but she's taking counseling. She said she might even move away for a while. Honestly, I think it's what she needs." Marcus nodded. Maybe distance will help her see things clearer. Sometimes stepping back is the only way to move forward. As the sun dipped lower, the crowd gathered near the lake, where Linda took a small stage, a wooden platform built for community meetings. She tapped the microphone, her voice cheerful. "Everyone, before we wrap up this evening, I'd like to thank someone who reminded us all of what real leadership looks like. Not power, not control, but integrity." She looked toward Marcus. "Would you join us?" Applause broke out as Marcus stepped forward, modest but composed. He took the microphone, looking around at faces once distant, now open. "I'll be honest," he began. "When I moved here, I didn't expect to become part of anything like this. I just wanted peace, a quiet place to come home to after a long day. But what happened reminded me that peace doesn't come from silence. It comes from understanding." He paused, glancing at the lake behind them. We all make mistakes, some out of pride, some out of fear. But the real test isn't the mistake. It's what we do after. When someone wrongs us, we can choose anger or we can choose growth. And I think tonight proves that this community chose growth. The crowd clapped, but Marcus raised a hand, continuing softly. I'm not here as a police officer tonight. I'm here as your neighbor. Someone who believes we can live by something better than rules on paper. Real respect comes from the heart, and that's something no HOA can regulate. As the applause grew, Marcus smiled, a genuine, peaceful smile that came from somewhere deep inside. After the event, as the crowd dispersed and the sky turned to a deep violet, Marcus sat near the water, the reflection of lanterns shimmering across the lake's surface. He could hear faint laughter from the last few families packing up. For the first time since the chaos began, he felt at home. But as he stood to leave, he noticed a familiar figure approaching, Karen. Dressed simply, no clipboard, no authority in her walk, just a humbled woman seeking closure. She stopped a few feet away. Marcus, she began softly, I wasn't sure if I should come tonight, but I wanted to see what you built here, what everyone built. Marcus folded his arms. You were part of this place long before I was. You could have built it too. She nodded slowly. I see that now. I thought leadership meant control, that rules made people respect me. But I was wrong. You didn't shout, didn't threaten, and somehow everyone listened. Marcus looked at her thoughtfully. Respect isn't demanded, Karen, it's earned, one action at a time. Tears welled in her eyes. I ruined my reputation. I let pride destroy what I was supposed to protect. Marcus's voice softened. Then rebuild it, not with titles or votes, with honesty. Start small, help where you can. Listen before you act. People forgive more easily than you think when they see real change. She nodded, wiping her tears. Thank you for not destroying me when you could have. Marcus gave a faint smile. Justice isn't about destruction. It's about correction. As she walked away, the moonlight followed her steps across the path, a quiet symbol of redemption beginning to glow through the cracks of guilt. Weeks passed, and Lakeside Ridge thrived like never before. The HOA transformed into a community council, open discussions, transparent voting, and volunteer committees. The rules became flexible, centered around cooperation rather than fear. Marcus continued helping when he could, guiding without overpowering. Blake joined the local police cadet program, inspired by the man he once helped wrong. Linda was elected chair of the new neighborhood board, ensuring no one ever abused power again. As autumn rolled in, Marcus spent his evenings on the porch, watching the lake mirror the orange and gold leaves that drifted across its surface. Every so often he'd glance at the repaired lock hanging above his doorway, a reminder of how one act of arrogance turned into a lesson in unity. One night, as the wind carried the soft sound of laughter from the homes nearby, Marcus smiled to himself and whispered, "Peace, finally earned." He leaned back in his chair, the stars shimmering overhead, and for the first time, the lake wasn't just a reflection of stillness, it was a reflection of forgiveness. The HOA that once divided neighbors had become the bond that united them. And Marcus Reed, the man whose Jeep started it all, had quietly rewritten the meaning of justice, not through punishment, but through grace. The lake remained silent, but if one listened closely, it almost sounded like it was whispering back, a promise that peace once found would never be stolen again. If you liked this story, please like, subscribe, and share it with others so they can learn something from it too.